very fortunate industrial design studio based in New York and in London. And we've been lucky enough to work on some of the major cities in the world on the elements that you see every day, which is the bus shelters, the furniture, and the things that make up the fabric of what's happening on the street. So we've been able to have a significant impact and influence on the character of a city, and we're going to show you some examples of that through and what the sort of thought processes are involved in getting to this. I think you're probably familiar with this. This is the new New York bus shelter. There's 3,000 of them spread throughout the city, and we've just recently finished working on that contract, and there's still more to go. So we'd like to show you where we started from and how we got to this point.
We feel that we're quite unique in the sense that we operate as industrial designers as opposed to sort of in consumer products. We operate in an area between architecture and manufacturing. And in a sort of dry way, we're sort of bridging that gap that has opened up over decades or maybe centuries in the sense of the craft of building a building. As it gets more complex and the process of building gets more sort of controlled through contract, it's made it very hard for the architect to stay in connection with the changing way buildings are put together. So we kind of, 20 years ago, decided to work in this area and set up our business to sort of bridge that gap. So we work with architects and engineers, and we work with manufacturers, and subsequently we work for city agencies and that kind of organisation.
So when the first city that we had the opportunity to work with the council was Madrid, which is a beautiful and very romantic city. At the beginning, working with a city, you have to get to understand the feeling and the ambitions of the people that live and work there. And with Madrid in particular, you had a country that was coming out from under Franco. You had a hugely enthusiastic and very forward-looking group of people. So they were looking for something in their streets that reflected that, something that was modern, something that was contemporary, but also they wanted something that was highly functional and worked extremely well within the context of how the city works. So we spent an awful lot of time learning, going through a cultural experience, which involved an awful lot of very good Spanish food and meeting some wonderful people to understand the city. And we were brought around all the different areas. And then another layer of that was we had to experience how the city actually works. So we had to get our hands dirty and go out with the maintenance teams overnight, because these units have to be changed within 24 hours or there's penalties. The glass has to be changed. And in fact, Spain suffers from very little vandalization. They do obviously have a little bit of wear and tear every so often. The car plows into one. So our job then was to work up all of the components and work up every single element to a point where it could be easily replaced. It would be, the whole system would be super transparent, because you wanted the city to shine through these elements rather than it being something that's in your face, if you like, on the street. And we think that to innovate at this level and to build things at this level, you have to understand every element and how it's built and how it's made. So we get very much into the detail. And that's where product design comes in. And we drew the tools, for example, for all of these elements that were then built. We worked with the tool makers in Bilbao to create the components.
Yeah, I think key thing here is that if you understand the materials that you're working with and what the job they have to do over their life and maybe even longer, you have a chance to make materials work harder. And these products are around for a long time. They're not consumer products. They're 20-year franchises, and then you hope that they will stay on. And in fact, Madrid has decided to keep our furniture in the streets. So it's a kind of testament of creating an identity that people start to love, and you can only do that with quality. And it's also the kit that we designed was used in a different modality in Brasilia, and we used the components again to create a bus terminal in Bilbao. It was a temporary bus station. I think it's still there, but it was meant to be taken down and the components then used as bus shelters around the city. So we feel that if you are strategic about the way you'd put your ideas together at the beginning of a project in terms of design, your environmental impact is less. You can make things last longer because of quality. And it's important to think of those aspects when you design urban structures, because they should last, they should be appreciated. This project, we just wanted to sort of broaden a little bit before we focus back on New York. But this is a light rail system in Zurich. And again, what we learned about simplifying and making minimal structures that were not trying to impose an aesthetic or a pastiche or some sort of stylized impact. We were trying to pare back. And this window, which actually Owen sort of came up with this lovely idea of, each station is the same, but each view through the window is unique. And so you get an identity through that framed window. And then we used organic materials like wood for the seat. And we had to sell that quite hard, because they said, oh, well, it'll get vandalized, or, people will write their names in it. And it's like, well, so what? It's part of working in a city. That's what the materials are about. And that's textures of organic materials that grow better with time.
And another area that we do a lot of work in is rail. We do a lot of underground and overground systems. That's a major part of any city. And this is an example. This is my hometown, which is in Dublin. There's never been an underground system in Ireland. It was completely new for them. So it was a major project, very important personally in terms of what we were doing. We started the project thinking about what essentially, how does Dublin see itself now? Now, right at the moment, Dublin sees itself as a very impoverished country or city. But at the time, you had what was called the Celtic Tiger, and you had a new confidence in this country that I'd never seen before, and I'd been brought up there. They looked at themselves as being very much a part of Europe, very much European, not part of the British Isles, but a European country and a global country. So what we designed was something that was sharp, clean, simple, and probably a more kind of a Mediterranean feel about it. And we worked very closely with Grimshaw Architects on this project. And one of the nice ideas that they came up with us was to keep the top of the stations open, to reduce the amount of clutter in the station and keep it all clean, was to wayfind by looking through the roof of the station. So you can actually see just slightly, there's a statue on O'Connell Street in the centre of Dublin, and that's how you know where you are. You don't necessarily have to have a sign everywhere. And the other thing that was interesting about this project was, instead of just thinking about the station and the station's architecture, we took it a step further and worked with Alstom, the train manufacturer, and created something that had a link between the two, so that there was a language in the journey and the experience of moving through the city that was interconnected. And that's a lot of the work that we try and do, is try and think bigger and think how more parties can come together. And for Alstom, the train manufacturer, was the first time anyone from the architectural team had actually come to see their train designers, and they were very open and very welcoming of the idea.
And this is sort of making the experience connected, and about bringing the whole journey in public transportation in the city as one that you have a feeling about it, rather than just brutally going through the turnstiles, getting on the train. And there's actually information that's coming to you through the sort of systems that are there, that it's clear, and it's important, because the transport sort of journey is made much more pleasurable if you don't have to make decisions. You don't have to kind of stop and think. It's actually you can keep moving, and this is the whole goal of our sort of strategy on information. So New York City, we very, very fortunate that we won this project, or Samusa won the project. And the key here, and sort of we'd been designing in the urban realm for like 10 years before we started this project, and so the key for the design here is to really make an understated shelter. And when I say understated, no one notices public furniture anyway. They're sitting waiting for the bus. They do not look at it. It's only train spotters like us that perhaps kind of look at the roof and see what it's like. So we wanted to really sort of make a very robust sort of portal frame, cantilevered from the back, because taxis do mount pavements and crash through structures. And so we were trying to keep it away from the street, but and keep it light, transparent. The glass, sorry, I said that before. The glass was sort of roof was etched so that it basically creates shadow but doesn't take away the light. You know, you don't want to be under a heavy canopy. And we integrated lighting at both ends, information. And now there are 3,500 of these on the street. And we feel that the single solution, which was originally not in the brief, we were given a solution for the outer boroughs and one for Manhattan, and we argued very strongly with people who actually agreed that we should only have one, a democratic shelter for the whole city. And I feel that we've been very successful. We've had very, very few sort of complaints, actually, and we've had very good responses, even when someone decided to run along the roof and completely destroyed every panel of glass. They were able to replace it within sort of basically 45 minutes because of our design. We know that has to happen. You just drive a truck up, stand on the truck, pull the glass out, put it back in. So really simple ideas, working hard and making all this material really work hard for the city and give the city something that's not just for the 20 years of the contract. Sorry, going on. We also did the newsstands and the public toilet. And so this whole idea of having an identity and the use of stainless steel, it reflects the materials around. So you have this sort of feeling of the colours are right. And those choices were really deliberate, so because New York is very diverse, and whether you're on sort of Broadway or whether you're on Atlantic Avenue, there are amazing buildings everywhere, and you don't want sort of this dominant object to suddenly create a black object in front of the building. So.
Yeah, the other thing was that it was the first public toilet in New York. Which was really annoying, because when they put the pictures of it in the New York Times and we wanted our beautiful design to be shown, they showed the inside of the public toilet was the picture that they had.
I'll talk.
You designed it. I don't think I even drew anything on it.
Yeah. This was a project, and this is what we're trying to drive at in design in the urban realm. There is no reason not to have good quality. It doesn't, I mean, I'll talk about money, it doesn't cost any more to have beautiful objects in the street. You just have to be intelligent about how you procure it. And we were awarded this job literally to close a gap between the bus bulb if people know, down in Soho on Broadway, this crazy fence that was put up to stop people falling into a gutter. Anyway, we were asked to take it away, and we made a bench, and we came up and we basically, very simple stainless steel bench tube, creating a love seat. And we argued about this, and it's a bit romantic sort of thing. And actually, we were arguing that your physical proximity to someone is actually, you can get much closer to someone if your back's to them. So leaning forward, it becomes a very personal space to sit at, and then leaning back, it can become very intimate. And the simple materials, they're self-finished, stainless steel, and the aluminium casting we took the kind of reference of the glass ley lights along sort of Prince Street and stuff, where you have these cast iron lighting to get into the basements, and so we took that as the sort of imagery. So we feel, and it's 15 seats, and they came, under budget, less than a catalogue item.
So we're currently working on Times Square with Snoetta Architects on the redevelopment, and it's fully pedestrianised, as you're probably aware if you're a New Yorker. We also worked, probably more interestingly, on the very first project, which was the first pedestrianisation of Broadway. And in that event, we didn't have any stainless steel or castings. We had paint, was all we had, to define the areas that would be cycle lanes or where cars were. And we worked with a team to develop the solution. We weren't involved in the selection of the furniture. It was all done very, very, very quickly in order to capture the street and just try it out. And it was a brilliant idea to try it out. It wasn't permanent, it wasn't necessarily permanent, and see how it worked with the city and see if it was acceptable. And we're delighted that has now led to working on something much more permanent, which is a new plaza at Times Square. And we're also working on the Hudson Square area, which is a huge challenge in terms of trying to maintain the fabric of an area that it's a very unique part of New York, a sort of island almost of an area. It's got a very creative community living and working within it, and we're working with the bid on that area.
Yeah, I think here that you know, people would say, why industrial design getting involved in the street at strategic level? And I think that as I said before, if you understand that an architect approaches a problem and from the perspective of planning, scale, and creating space, and in the building process, that's obviously the correct chronological sort of way to do it. But if you don't do the granulation of the street or the elements that go into it at the same time, by the time the project gets to completion, those elements are ones that sort of get cut. They kind of, you know, when the budget's on those kind of, people think, oh, well, can't do that, we'll just buy something off the shelf. So it's really important to run it through and actually have an idea. And we're a human scale, we're only, 5 foot whatever, and well, but, and we worry about, our clothes, our shoes, and the public realm just away from our bodies is either some sort of, personal object that you carry or whatever, or it's the street. And it seems to be it's gone, the level of attention is really high and then really low, and then it comes back up again when it comes to the buildings. And we think that it's really important, and there's no reason not to make it better, because it's just about being intelligent and strategic.
And the next thing we're working on, which is far off, we think, but we hope to succeed, is another layer of detail in the city, which is lighting cities. And I think if any of you, like I had a flat in London with a sodium lamp that was just outside the window blasting in through the window. We've all had that experience in cities. We have to change. The lights have to change. LED technology is going to completely change the world. So
we've got a wonderful project to work on. It's not about changing the lamp, taking out your GLS bulb or whatever, putting in a fluorescent bulb because that's what you were told to do, and then find that it's full of mercury, and then you go and get, now you get an LED bulb and it's the same sort of shape, and you kind of think, well, this doesn't make sense, it's crazy. We have such an opportunity to create a new modality of light with LED. It's going to really be a fundamental change in the way we think about lighting. It's the fluorescent lamp was invented in the 1910 around. So that's the next level of lighting. Has taken 100 years to come through, and it's really going to make a difference. And it won't be a choice. You will be using LED lighting in the future, and we hope that perhaps Piers will invite us back in a few years when we've done something with LED lighting for cities. And that's the end of our presentation.
Thanks very much.